I worked 12 years for the family business, but my dad gave it to my sister and her fiancé, then begged for help when they abandoned him. I, 36F, was fired from the firm that my father had started only 8 months before. For background, I've been with the family firm for nearly 12 years. My grandfather on my father's side created a jewelry business that we own. It was passed down to my father, and I assumed it would come to me next. After all, I am the older sister, and I have been interested in business since I was a teenager. My father always told me that he expected me to someday take over the firm. My sister, 33F, never appeared interested in a profession. She only wanted to marry and start a kid. So if Dad was going to have an heir to the company, it was supposed to be me. This has always been taken for granted. There was no formal documentation of it, but I suppose I should have planned for anything similar. I had been my father's personal assistant for 12 years. I even abandoned my first job after only 2 years because I wanted to obtain real-world experience before joining my father. I did not want to come across as entitled. However, I left my job once my father requested me to start working for him. Despite everything I had done, I was kicked out of the firm in favor of my sister and her tremendously wealthy fiancé. My sister hadn't even been a member of the family for the previous 15 years. She made a few terrible actions, and my parents cut her off shortly after she turned 18. She had announced that she would not be attending college and instead wanted to explore and discover herself. That did not set well with my parents. They offered her an ultimatum. Either attend college or leave. Being the type of person she is, she opted to leave and live with her partner at the moment. They ended their romance after only 6 months together. Then she showed up at our door, pleading to be allowed back into the family. Before she went, she told my parents a lot of terrible things, such as how she no longer needed them and how she would be better off without a family like ours. She also said that we were not good enough for her because her boyfriend's family had a much better financial situation than us. She had insulted and humiliated us before going away. When she returned, my father informed her that the terms he had imposed previously remained in effect. If she wanted to return, she would have to go to college and earn a degree, regardless of what she selected. Otherwise, she may stay outside. My sister attempted to argue and fight her way back into the family. But my father was resolute. She chose to depart again, vowing never to return. For the next 15 years, we only saw her at family gatherings and never communicated with her otherwise. We discovered information about her life updates from other relatives because she refused to speak with us directly. My mother and I attempted to contact her several times, but because we were on good terms with my father, she refused to speak with us. To her credit, she kept her word and never returned until my father chose to make touch with her again. During that period, she sorted out her life, but not in the way we expected. She never attended college since she wasn't interested. Instead, she lived with a friend for a period, acquired a job, and began working to support the life she desired. I believe that event helped her mature significantly. She changed jobs frequently, but for the past few years, she had worked at an advertising agency. Our family maintained track of her life through other relatives. She knew about us as well, thanks to the same family. My father became very ill about a year ago and we were on the verge of losing him due to heart failure. The cardiologist informed us that his condition was serious and that he needed to make significant lifestyle adjustments. During this health scare, my father decided it was time to contact my sister and reconcile their relationship. By this point, my sister had matured significantly over the previous 15 years, and she finally accepted to rejoin the family. She came to see us alone, and we didn't chat much about her life because we were too occupied reminiscing about the past. She didn't want to make it all about herself, so she didn't reveal anything about what she'd been up to. The information we didn't obtain from her came from our relatives. We knew how she was doing professionally but not much about her personal life. Anyway, she seemed pleased to be back, and we were all focused on the reconciliation of father and daughter. It was a really emotional reunion, and I was delighted at the time, not knowing what would happen next. When she returned to see us for the second time, she brought her fiancé, which surprised everyone. She informed us they'd been dating for 3 years and were only recently engaged. None of us in the family knew about it, so we didn't find out through our regular channels. They'd kept it under wraps. The flow of information was not one-sided. Thanks to our relatives, she knew our father had some health issues, but she had no idea how serious they were. That is why she had not visited us sooner, and she felt it was inappropriate to announce her engagement at the time. Now that everything had cooled down, she decided it was time to introduce him to the family, so she invited him along. He appeared like a pleasant guy and I could tell he was wealthy. His clothes, watch and shoes were all costly. I felt glad for my sister because it appeared that she had finally found someone who fit her expectations. He was financially secure, had a clear vision for his life, and had his future planned out. After speaking with both of them, we discovered that her fiancé, like her first boyfriend, was the son of a wealthy man who operated a fast food franchise. Unlike her first relationship, this guy looked serious about her, and they were clearly in love. I was truly thrilled for her and complimented both of them. I never expected my father, or even my sister and her fiancé, to do what they did next. However, after only 3 weeks of knowing him, my father believed it was best if they take over the family business. He contacted me one morning and asked me to come home so we could chat about something. I was at work, running everything since my father's heart health had deteriorated, and I was essentially the boss at that point, even though he hadn't officially resigned. I knew retirement was imminent and I was convinced that I would be the next in line to take over as CEO. But that day altered everything. Suddenly, my sister and her fiancé were in the running to take over the business I had been running for years. When I arrived at my parents' house, my sister and her fiancé were not present, but my parents were, and they looked grim. After some casual chat, my father dropped the bombshell. I initially assumed he was joking, but when I learned he was genuine, I couldn't believe it. When I inquired why he would make such a radical decision after just 3 weeks of knowing him, he said he had reasons but refused to discuss. After much fighting, Dad finally revealed that he thought my sister and her fiancé would be better at operating the firm than I was. The cherry on top was that he thought gifting them the business would be a welcome gift, to bring them back into the family, as they were about to begin a new chapter by getting married. He thought this would be their wedding gift. I attempted to persuade him that this was a terrible idea. A wedding gift doesn't have to be the size of an entire business simply because the guy appeared wealthy. In addition, my father had always told me that when he retired, I would inherit the firm. I had formed my entire life around that expectation, and now he was taking it away from me to give to individuals who had been out of our lives for 15 years. I tried to tell him that maybe he could make us business partners and bargained and negotiated with him because we were talking about my future. But my father was adamant that it would be better if they took over. He contended that because my sister's fiancé's father had previously established a successful business, they would be able to grow our jewelry business twice as quickly as I could. I begged him for just one opportunity, but he wouldn't listen. I was heartbroken. Not just because I was losing something so important, but also because I had dedicated 12 years of my life to the business only to wind up with nothing. Worse, I still hadn't won my father's respect. If he had truly recognized the time and effort I had put into the firm, he would not have dismissed me. That was the day I resolved to cut all links with my family because I had nothing else to say to them. I had hoped my sister would fight for me, but she also let me down. She and her fiancé eagerly received the so-called wedding gift, which was effectively my life's labor. My sister knew I'd always aspired to take over the family business after my father retired. I had talked about it non-stop since I was 13. She knew exactly what she was doing when she took that gift. She was snatching my dreams and transforming them into her own. To make matters worse, she took to social media to thank our parents for the magnificent wedding gift and then used the post to announce her engagement. The most upsetting aspect of it was that no one from the family contacted me after that. When I left my father's house, it felt as if everyone had stopped caring about me. I felt used, and it appeared that the 12 years I had spent in the business had been completely wasted. Fortunately, I had enough savings to fall back on. For the following few months, I did nothing except try to put my life back together. Everything had fallen apart. That happened 8 months ago. Since then, I began therapy because I could feel myself slipping into depression and knew I wanted to treat it before it worsened. Seeing my sister's social media posts made me nauseous, so I blocked her. I also informed my relatives that I was no longer in contact with my family and did not want to hear anything about them, no matter how important the news. They followed my desires and kept everything a secret from me. As a result, I had no notion that my father's health had been slowly declining over the previous few months. My sister and her fiancé seem unconcerned about it. I only found out a week ago, when my father contacted me from the hospital. He informed me that he had suffered a cardiac arrest in the middle of the night and asked me to come see him. Because I had banned his number, he called me using someone else's phone. I felt awful for a moment, but then I remembered what he had done to me 8 months before, and the remorse subsided slightly. After that phone call, I promised to come meet him immediately. I dropped everything and headed to the hospital. When I arrived, my mother and father were present, but my sister and her fiancé were nowhere to be found. I found this perplexing because I assumed they were close, especially since they ran the family business. I couldn't help but ask my parents where my sister and her fiancé were as soon as I walked into the hospital room. With great regret, my father informed me that my sister and her fiancé had both claimed to be too busy to come. I was shocked. Running the business for 12 years taught me that it was a profitable venture that almost ran itself. Unless there was a serious catastrophe, there was no reason to be at work all the time. That's how it worked when I was in control. I couldn't say how things were going under their control, but when my father said they were too busy to see him, I inquired whether they had paid him any visits since his heart attack. He admitted they had not. He had contacted them, but they had only texted back, stating they were too busy and would come after he was discharged. These details astounded me, and I could tell my father recognized he had made a huge mistake in handing over the reins of the firm to my sister and her fiancé. He explained that one of the main reasons he called was to apologize for what he had done. He stated that he felt guilty and sorry for pushing me out of the firm despite all of my hard work and effort. Now he wants to make things right by inviting me back into the family and the business. He described how heartbroken he was when my sister and her fiancé did not arrive at the hospital. He realized that they didn't care about him in the same manner that he cared for them. He also informed me that this was not the first time they had refused to show up for him. They had become increasingly estranged in recent months. After he handed over the firm, their visits grew less frequent. They used to come every other day to check on him when his health began to deteriorate, but now they claim they are too busy with work to come by. This did not set well with him. Or me, because we both know no one is busy. It wouldn't have been difficult for them to take an hour out of their day, especially given they live just a few blocks away from my parents' house. My father had said nothing at the moment, but they had passed a limit, and he could no longer take their contempt. He wanted to reclaim his firm and give it to the person who actually deserved it. Me. We discussed everything in the hospital room, and he formally invited me back into the firm. I was overjoyed. My father apologized for everything, and while I wasn't fully over it, I forgive him since gaining back what I had worked for meant everything to me. If forgiving my father was the price, I was willing to pay it. The difficulty now is that my father had previously discussed this with my sister. He informed her he wanted her to leave the business because he had discovered that, while he had always cared for her, she had never been there for him. He couldn't stand the disrespect any longer, so he resolved to reclaim the company and give it to the rightful owner. He told her that they'd have to look after themselves. Unsurprisingly, my sister was upset. For whatever reason, she blamed me for everything. She contacted me this morning and lashed out, accusing me of being a horrible person and said she couldn't believe I would be so rude to her. I'm not really sure why she's acting so crazily. I think there's something we don't know, but she's acting as if she's lost everything. And it's all my fault. The reality is, I believe this is her own fault. She chose not to see our father after he suffered a cardiac arrest, which is a dangerous situation. She could have taken time off work to visit him. She was the one acting selfishly, and now I'm receiving what I've always deserved. 8 months ago, she had no trouble receiving a present she knew she didn't deserve. So why should I turn my back on something I actually deserve? She was devastated, and I tried to console her, but she hung up mid-sentence. Now I'm wondering if I'm the evil guy here. I feel like I'm constantly taking the blame, and I'm fatigued. Am I a jerk for allowing my father to ask my sister and her fiancé to leave the family business so that I could retake it? Update 1. Thank you all very much for your responses. I felt I didn't deserve my sister's criticism, but hearing it from you has reassured me. If people who know nothing about our lives believe I deserve the business, I have nothing further to say in my defense. I don't think I have to either. It's been a few days since I last spoke with my sister and I haven't heard back. The good news is that she hasn't blocked me on any platform, so I suppose that's a good indication. I can't shake the notion that there's more going on than she's admitting. I find it difficult to imagine that someone with a wealthy fiancé would act in this manner simply because they lost control of our firm. I believe that not everything is as it appears with her fiancé. Some of you inquired about this in the comments section of the original piece, but I did not address it since I did not believe it was important at the time. Now, however, I assume her fiancé's family is struggling financially. According to what I've heard, his father's company has suffered considerable losses over the last year and has been unable to recover. I believe my sister and her fiancé saw our family business as an opportunity to sneak in and take over as a backup plan. I still don't understand why my sister reacted so strongly when she realized that I was being allowed to rejoin the company and she was being asked to step down. If her fiancé's family was still financially secure, she wouldn't have to be concerned. However, she was distraught. And something about the situation did not make sense. I have a hunch she will tell the truth shortly. Fortunately, my father never signed any agreements or contracts that would have legally passed the firm to my sister and her fiancé. That would have been disastrous. He remained CEO the entire time, with them reporting to him in the same position I had held. He had been educating them to take over, but it is now evident that this will not happen. I spoke with my father, who informed me that my sister is quite sad, but he cannot afford to worry about her sentiments right now. His primary objective is to transfer the business to me so that I can take control and manage everything. He's already working with a lawyer to create the required documentation, and I should be taking over very shortly. To be honest, I'm looking forward to the adjustment, and my sister's dramatic outbursts can't bring me down right now. Update 2. Hello everyone. It's been a few weeks since my last post, and I wanted to give you an update. I am now the new CEO of my father's jewelry firm. The transition is complete, and it feels fantastic to finally be in charge. There were some difficulties throughout the changeover, primarily due to my sister's intervention, but it's finally complete. My sister is not thrilled about any of this, and I can now confirm that my theory was true. She and her fiancé were attempting to establish a foothold in our family business, despite knowing that her fiancé's father's company was faltering. They saw the family firm as a safety net in case his father's company failed. Apparently, it was my sister's idea to persuade my father to reintegrate them into the family by transferring the firm to her fiancé. Unfortunately, my father fell for it. He revealed to me recently that he was not thinking clearly at the time. He was enticed by the thought that someone from a successful business family could run the company better than I could. My father first intended to keep me in my previous position, but when I stated unequivocally that I wanted to be the company's CEO or nothing, he became enraged. That's what caused the 8 months of anguish for both of us. Fortunately, my father came to his senses just in time to avoid a huge catastrophe. As it turns out, my sister's fiancé and his father's firm are in terrible difficulties, with their market credibility virtually wiped out. I'd heard reports that their business was likely to fail, but I didn't believe them. I assumed that if something significant happened, my father would contact me, and he expected me to do the same if I was aware. Unfortunately, neither of us contracted out, which was a poor decision. My sister recently revealed the truth. She contacted me soon before the move was complete, admitting that they needed work because they didn't know how long her fiancé's father could keep his firm running. She asked me for assistance. I told her I'd think about it, and I honestly don't mind hiring them. However, knowing their true goals from the outset, I can no longer trust them. That's what I'm fighting with right now. I want to help her, but how can I hire somebody I don't trust? I told her I needed time to make a decision, and she agreed to wait. Update 3. After careful consideration, I have chosen not to hire my sister and her fiancé. I know this may appear selfish to some, but I can't trust them. When my father offered them the business, they accepted without hesitation, and for 8 months, they had no sympathy or concern for anyone other than themselves. I do not want folks like that working with or around me. It was difficult, but I informed my sister that I couldn't assist her. As expected, she did not take it well. She came into my office the other day, threw a fit, and accused me of being callous and selfish. She even stated she regretted giving me the company back, which I thought odd because it was never her decision. It was my father's. Her assertion that she did me a huge favor by letting me take over the company was absurd. I might have tolerated her actions, but her statement irritated me. I informed her that she had never done me any favors, not now, nor in the past. She never cared about me, therefore she couldn't expect me to care about her right now. I calmly asked her to leave, but she refused and kept screaming at me, undermining me in my own office. At that point, I had no choice but to phone the police and have her removed. I'm too busy at work to deal with unnecessary drama. When the cops arrived, she didn't say much and eventually left. It's been a few days since the incident and I still haven't heard from her. I assume she'll leave us alone now, but even if she doesn't, I'm not worried. I'll get a restraining order if necessary.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.